Hello, I'm Stephen Missick. I want to do a addendum to a Voice the Word program that I just recently did to clarify a few things that came up. And I want to talk about Assyrian ID, and I also want to talk about why the Assyrian Christian culture is worth preserving. Because somebody posted some comments that's like, well, the Assyrian people they're facing cultural extinction. They're going to die out. And this person posts there, let them die. We don't need them anymore. What value is there? What's so superior about the Assyrian culture that it should be preserved? I thought in the Old Testament times the Assyrians were pretty brutal. Well, were they brutal in Old Testament times? What about the Anglo-Saxons who invaded England with brutality? What about the Romans who brutally destroyed the Carthaginians and other peoples? So it's not like, yes, the ancient Assyrian Empire was brutal, but that was part of the way wars were waged in ancient times. It's terrible. And they used fear and coercion and also propaganda to keep people in line. But they weren't much different from the Babylonians or other ancient empires at that time in regarding their brutality. So I want to begin by looking at the question, why should the Assyrian culture even be preserved anyway? This person's saying, let them be genocided. Just be rid of them. And I think it's a terrible thing to say, and I want to look at why the Assyrian culture should be preserved.
Jesus was an Aramaic-speaking Jew of the Middle East, and the Assyrians are Aramaic-speaking Christians in the Middle East who have endured persecution for over 1,000 years. Join Voice of the Word Aramaic Bible teacher, artist, and author Stephen Missick as he examines the Bible through the ancient languages, peoples, lands, cultures, and times in which it was first revealed. Research the Scriptures, rescue persecuted Christians, and restore the Church to its Semitic roots. And now, Voice of the Word.
So, it would seem to me that, let's look at the Native American Indian tribes. It's really sad when you have, one elder who's the last speaker of this language, and in a Native American Indian language, and he dies away. It's a sad loss, but there are many Indian reservations. They have a degree of autonomy, and there are efforts made to preserve Native American Indian culture, and it's valued. And so if we're going to value that culture, other cultures, why shouldn't we value the Assyrian culture? And why is the Assyrian culture important? It's important because they speak a Bible language. They speak Aramaic, one of the languages of the Old Testament, and the language that was spoken by Jesus Christ, the language used in the New Testament. And this is an ancient branch of Christianity, according to the ancient traditions, founded by the 12 apostles themselves, by St. Thomas the Apostle, by Thaddeus, by Mari. And here you have a Christian church, an Aramaic-speaking church in the Middle East, founded by the apostles. And Islam and other forces threw everything at them to destroy them, and they've lost a lot, but they've survived to this day. Why should we just let these people die? Why shouldn't we preserve Aramaic as a spoken language, the language of Jesus Christ? I think there is value in that, and it's better to have the Assyrian culture as a living culture and tradition instead of just things you read about in books in the library or doing research. It's amazing they have survived, and I think we need to keep this as a vibrantly living ancient Christian community. I think it's kind of appalling. The person who posted that is a lover of Islam for whatever reason, and I guess approves of Muslims wiping out Christian communities. I think we need to resist that. And the thing is, the Muslims intend to wipe out Western civilization. And I really believe, England is at a precipice. England is going to have to take a stand to preserve their culture, because they don't have much longer and it's going to be lost. England, I assure you, even if England does take efforts to preserve its culture, it's probably inevitable that they're going to have violence. England is going to go through whenever you have a sizable Muslim population, everywhere there's always violence, because Islam is a political system that seeks domination. It's a totalitarian system. It's a political system. It's not just a religion. It's an all-encompassing way of life. And it demands to be in control of everything. And they always look at India, Pakistan, they always want to claim special rights and privileges, and then they want to dominate, and it always happens. I don't want it to happen, but I'm saying it's going to happen. And here in Texas, they're trying to build a megalopolis, this gigantic jihadi Sharia law city. The left-wingers, they lose their ever-loving mind if Christians have any impact on society and culture whatsoever, if even Christianity is presented in a positive manner. They want the left wing, the liberals, progressives, they won't have it. And yet, they turn a blind eye to a huge chunk of Texas and the Dallas-Fort Worth area becoming an independent Sharia law theocracy. Is that acceptable? There's this woman here in Texas running for Congress. Her name is Valentina Gomez, and they're at the states of the Capitol, and we're going to have Sharia law in Texas. We're going to break off, and we're going to have Sharia law Texas, and that's what's going to happen here in the state of Texas. Texas is ours. And she's Hispanic, so you really can't tell a lot of difference between Hispanic people and people from the Middle East. So she just went up to the podium and said, "I believe in Lord Jesus, my Savior is Jesus Christ. I believe Jesus is God, and Islam and will never triumph over Texas. You're a false religion. Jesus is the way, in truth, and life." Something to that effect. And I think that her zeal is necessary. We're in trouble. We're in trouble. And I gave this other program. We should look at it. It's like, why is it seemingly what happens? What has America been doing? Like in Somalia, in Iraq, even in Bosnia, Kosovo, the United States of America props up radical Islamic regimes and looks the other way while Christians are oppressed or ethnically cleansed. I mean, we went to war. We went to war. America went to war in the former Yugoslavia to prevent so-called ethnic cleansing. And yet when the Assyrians face ethnic cleansing and genocide, we have indifference, including from this person, which I think is sick and demented and disturbing. It's appalling. Someone supporting genocide, posting comments, genocide of the oldest Christian community on earth, the last Aramaic speakers. This person posts comments wanting these people genocided. And as I said in the other program, the Assyrian culture, that's their ancient ancestors, the Assyrian Empire. And there's nothing to be ashamed of anymore. Like Rome, the Romans were brutal. The Anglo-Saxons were brutal. Yes, it's true, the ancient Assyrians did engage in some brutality. But there's more to that culture and civilization than that. But there's the modern Assyrians, even though that's their ancient ancestors, even though they are Assyrians, they have a distinct cultural identity as a Christian people. The Assyrian culture as it exists today was created or born, it's founded by King Abgar of Edessa, St. Thomas the Apostle, Mar Adai or Jude Thaddeus, and Mar Marai, St. Marai. That's when the Assyrian identity as we know it came into existence. It's a Christian people and a Christian culture. And yes, I do believe it should be preserved. It's like the Jewish people, they take steps to observe, to preserve their culture. We have to, they claim we have to have a Jewish state to preserve our identity and protect ourselves from anti-Semitism. Well, how come Assyrian Christians, since they're under a more dire threat than the Jews are at this time, why can't they take efforts or steps? And it would be nice to create an independent Assyrian nation, but we have to be practical. So that's what I'm doing in these things I'm talking about. So what I want to look at is some questions that came up based on my my post about how to preserve the Assyrian culture. And here are the questions. So it says, why am I convinced that the Assyrian Church of the East will join with the Catholic Church? Okay, here's why I think it's. I mean, I don't want that to happen. Personally, it's trending. It's trending that way. I've mentioned this before, but you look at the nation of Poland, and a lot of people do not know that Poland was, during the Protestant Reformation, it was a Protestant nation. Now it's one of the most devoutly Catholic nations on earth. What happened? Well, the Jesuits came in and offered a high-quality Catholic education for free, the best education in the world, to Polish nobles. And it took a few decades, but they indoctrinated the children of the Protestant nobles of Poland, and before long, they're all Catholic because they received Catholic indoctrination through their education. And a lot of the bishops are educated. Maybe it's a fine, great educated. We need to have educated clergy. I have a doctorate. I respect their education. But, if you're indoctrinated in Roman Catholic traditions as being the right and proper way, it could convince people that that's the issue. And about 15 years ago or so, we had one of the bishops in California. He's like, what are we waiting for? We had this dialogue with the Catholic Church. Let's just take the plunge. We need to go into Roman Catholicism. And he did, and he took 1,000 Assyrian Christian families with him. That's a big loss. And where did they go? Where did he go? Into the Chaldean Catholic Church. That's what happened. And I really believe, I think that the only thing stopping the Assyrian Church of the East from becoming Roman Catholic is the fractures and divisions and the resistance among the parishioners, among the faithful that are part of the Assyrian Church. If it wasn't for that, it's like, okay, we want to, the leadership. Let's go join the Catholic Church. Let's just become part of the Chaldean Catholic Church. The only hesitancy is, it's like, is that what the Assyrian people want? Probably not. I don't think so. So that's I think it's the only thing that's holding them back. I just objective. I think that's objectively true, based on what I've seen. So this person says, why or how are you so convinced that the Assyrian Church will join with the Catholic Church? I don't think that's going to happen. I think that there are people who want it to happen. People are moving that direction. It's not going to happen yet, but I think that they're trying to move the Assyrian people that direction. It says, if it's my opinion that if it were to happen, there would be a mass exodus from the Church of the East, the Assyrian Church of the East, to the ancient Church of the East, including me, as this person writes. I agree that that's true. That might be, it could be good. If you want to preserve the Assyrian Church of the East, it's probably good that the ancient Church of the East is out there, because that will prevent the Assyrian Church of the East from uniting with the Catholic Church or the Chaldean Catholic Church. But if they become, if the Assyrian Church of the East says, we want to become Roman Catholic now, eventually they will be incorporated with the Chaldean Catholic Church. Inevitably. It'll happen. Like I said, I'm not for it. I'm against it. So Mar Addai II of the ancient Church of the East passed away. And you had Mar Georgis Sliwa of the Church of the East, and you had Mar Awa. During that time, there were, and this is coming from the ancient church sources, and the rumors are that the ancient Church of the East, it's like, why don't we just come back together? Let's reunite the church. We can work it out to become one church. And they had various issues that they couldn't agree on. One of them is the ancient church says, okay, if we join with the Assyrian Church of the East and merge again, we want assurances that the reunited church will not convert to Catholicism and become part of the Catholic Church, be incorporated with the Chaldean Catholic Church. And Assyrian church leaders refused to give the ancient Church of the East those assurances. So, I mean, that's what people are saying. Is it true? I don't know. I think it probably is. I suspect it is true. So I'm just trying to follow the facts. All right, here's another thing. Where do you get the idea that we are close to Indian and Chinese Church of the East, Assyrian Church of the East members? The Indian Church is part of the Assyrian Church of the East, and I guess the old calendar for a while. They're accepted as part of the Assyrian Church of the East. So I don't think there's any hostility towards the, George Mokum, Mar Opram Mokum, he was very beloved by Assyrians around the world. That's the Bishop of India. I met him. I respected him. I'm just saying that there is. I know people. I don't want to betray confidences of people, but what happened is you had Chinese Christians who approached the Assyrian Church of the East, and these Chinese Christians are like, "Why don't we belong to the original Chinese denomination? Our heritage as Chinese Christians is in the Church of the East, the Assyrian Church of the East. That's our church. That's how we receive the gospel. All the old monuments that we have, the ancient inscriptions, are of the so-called Nestorian Church. This is the Assyrian Church of the East. So let's just come back home to the Assyrian Church." And there's this big effort, and there were overtures in the Church of the East, to accepting of it. But somebody made a decision. Someone made a decision not to accept these Chinese Christians who wanted to join the Assyrian Church. A decision was made to rebuff, and one of these Chinese leaders, Christian leaders who wanted to do that, I guess was very disappointed. He's all excited about joining the Assyrian Church of the East. And it's like, it's not going to happen. So, and I know people who were involved in that who know about what was going on back then. And yeah, the Chinese that were interested in United, they're actually dejected and saddened that they weren't accepting the Assyrian Church of the East. So who made that call and why? So what happened is you had Chinese Christians who wanted to join the Assyrian Church of the East. And maybe the masses of the faithful in the Assyrian Church would embrace these Chinese Christians and welcome them home into their original church. But there are people who made a decision not to accept them, at least at this time. I don't want to betray confidences, but that is true. Maybe they will in the future. I doubt it. So the question is, so what happened is Chinese Christians are trying to join the Assyrian Church, and they were rejected by somebody, at least for now. Why? Why would you? There's only two explanations I can think of, because, like I said, I do not think that the Assyrian people are hostile to Chinese joining the church. But it's like the only thing I can think of is like, what if millions because China's got a big population, what if all these Chinese join the Assyrian Church and the Assyrian Church becomes Chinese majority? But like I said, it was that way in the past. We can only speculate, right? All I know is that Chinese Christians, and there probably could be tens of thousands or hundreds, it could be, we don't know how many would come. Many could. And for some reason, somebody made the decision to reject their efforts to come into the Assyrian Church of the East, at least for now. What are you waiting for? There has to be, the only thing I could think of is there could be people who don't want the Assyrians to be a minority in their own church, perhaps, and have a Chinese majority. I just can't understand why they would reject these Chinese Christians from entering into the Assyrian Church of the East. And maybe the ancient church should look into accepting these people, because I think it's folly. Not, like I said, these people could be giving a lifeline to the church as China's developing into a great global power. Chinese people coming to the Assyrian Church, it's like, having tens of thousands of Indian, does that members of the Assyrian Church of the East, does that affect in a negative way the Assyrian Church of the East? No. There's always been the Assyrian Church lost the churches in Mongolia and China. The Assyrian Church never lost the connection with the Indian part of the church. But now it looks like there's a potential the Chinese churches and perhaps the Mongolian churches being restored. But people who make these decisions or influence the decision makers, like I said, I think it's a crazy decision, but somebody's made this decision. And the only other reason why I could think of is the Catholics don't want the Christians in China to become Syriac or Aramaic Christians. Maybe it's because, there's communism. There's a lot of Catholics, and there's different ways the Catholic Church came to China. But one of the ways they came to China was by taking over the Assyrian churches and taking over hostile takeovers of Assyrian churches. There's still, the first Chinese missionaries to arrive describe, taking over basically Assyrian churches. So we don't know all the answers. I'm just telling you, this is what's going on. Why? I don't know. So this person says, where do I get the idea that the Assyrians are closed? The Indian and Chinese Assyrian Church of the East members? I don't think the Assyrians are, but I think that people in leadership are resisting it. I think Mar Awa would be inclined to accept them. He actually went over to China and met with those people. But now he's not making any efforts to do that. And his thinking could be that, I don't know why he's doing that. I don't know. Mar Awa's a good guy. Why is that not being pursued? I don't know. Like I said, I can try to speculate, but it's happening. So it says, I get the impression that most Assyrians wholeheartedly welcome and support non-indigenous church members. I agree with that. And it mentions Mar Benjamins and Mar Timotheus, family members. Mar Timotheus was in India. I guess he was the one that led the old calendar group. All right. So we have mentioned that this person who posted hateful and incendiary comments calling for the genocide of the Assyrian people. I know who made those hateful comments, but I don't want to say anything more about it than I already have. It's disgusting. I hope that I should take those comments down. Very offensive comments calling for the destruction and death and the obliteration of the Assyrian people. Just real quick. So I think I've said that the Assyrian nation, stateless nation, should be preserved. The Assyrian language, the Assyrian culture, it should be preserved. And we see a lot of challenges to it. One of the greatest challenges is migration could lead to cultural extinction, because just like this chart Liz Huber made, first you have the first generation born in Mesopotamia, the second generation they speak Aramaic at home, but then the third generation is like, I think I'm Assyrian. I think I have some Assyrian family members. And then the fourth generation, what's an Assyrian? That's a trajectory. And what I'm saying is, we don't want that to happen. We want the Assyrian legacy to live on. So Assyrian ID is confronting this issue. And it's like I said, I've been very troubled by some of Tucker Carlson's comments, but Tucker talks about how that it seems like our government makes it very difficult for people in the United States who are inclined to have families to do so. And Assyrians, you have to grow the population. If you want to, for the Assyrian people and culture to have to go into the future, you have to have kids. If you don't have kids, you die out. And I think Assyrians should encourage people in the Assyrian community to have kids and to have more kids, because they need them. To survive as a nation, you have to have a populace. You have to marry within the community if possible and raise your kids as Assyrian, speaking Aramaic at home. Can you force people to do that? I'm just saying we need to encourage people to do that. Can't force people to do anything. But this is something that needs to be done to preserve the Assyrian culture and national identity and preserve the language. If you dwindle out, you're going to die out. And I think they proactively, like I said, the Assyrian church did it before. You had this terrible massacre. The Assyrian church was decimated under, was it Shapar, this crazy Zoroastrian fanatic trying to wipe out Christianity, just massacred God knows how many people. And then after the massacre, the Assyrians decided we have to rebuild our numbers, and the priests encouraged the flock, the people in the churches, look, we've lost a lot of members through martyrdom. We need to rebuild our church, and one of the easiest ways to do it. I mean, yes, it's hard to be a father and a mother and raise kids. It's a lot of challenges, but they made a concerted effort to do that, and they replenished their numbers. So that's just something that if Assyrians want to have a future, you create a future by creating families to continue the legacy. We have to maintain a presence in the homeland, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. I think that's obvious. All those, what we have there, we have to maintain. And we can't allow the Kurds or other people to drive the Assyrians off of their lands, And some Assyrians get mad if you try to have cordial relationships with the Kurds. We need to maintain a presence in the ancestral homeland. That might necessitate trying to forge better relationships with the Kurds, remembering the past, right? But you got to think about the future. What is it productive to have hostility between the Assyrians and their Kurdish neighbors? Maybe. I don't know. The Bible says, as much as is possible with you, live in peace with all people. But the other thing is, it's like we have to remember our martyrs, and a lot of Assyrians were martyred by Kurds on behalf of the Turks. We need to remember that. One of the ways to preserve and grow the community, I think we have to grow the community in Armenia. Why? Armenia is important because it's very close to the ancestral Assyrian homeland, and there's no religious persecution the way we see in Islamic countries. So there's a lot of opportunities in Armenia for Assyrian people. I think we should grow in found an Assyrian village over there because it's close to the homeland and they're safe from persecution. They have religious freedom. And if you have these opportunities, you should take advantage of them. I mentioned Jishru, which is like doing a pilgrimage to the Assyrian homeland, visiting historical and religious sites. That's good. But I think that we should encourage, you should have that just for Assyrian people and Assyrian youth. But we should also do a new Jishru Part 2 to bring in Americans and people from around the world to introduce them to the Assyrian culture. So I think we should do 2 types of Jishrus. I think it's a good idea. And I mentioned celebrities. Patrick David, he puts the Assyrian flag out there. He's showing his Assyrian culture. Sam Shamoun, the Assyrian encyclopedia. This anti-Assyrian person posted the hateful comments. Sam Shamoun can be belligerent towards Islamic extremists, towards blasphemers, towards heretics. We have to take a stand against this. I think sometimes he's speaking to people the way they deserve to be treated, but I just don't think he should be belligerent to everybody, to your friends, to Christians of other denominations. Just focus on should treat your friends with respect and go after your enemies. So Sam Shamoun's just throwing broadsides here and there, and he needs to focus on the bad guys, not on fellow Christians. Marmari Emmanuel, I talked about him more in the previous episode. I'm just saying that I guess certain church leaders might not have a high opinion or fond opinion of Marmari Emmanuel, but I respect what he's achieved. For an Assyrian bishop to become an internationally recognized preacher and to take a stand on moral issues that are important, that affect everyone's lives, to boldly speak against Islamic extremism and to put himself on the line where he almost died for faith in Jesus Christ. I respect that. I'm not saying the guy's perfect. Of course, I come from a different faith tradition. I probably don't agree with everything he believes and says, but I respect him and I respect what he's accomplished. And I think that's good for the Assyrian community. We need celebrities. And we got 3 here. There's probably more I could mention. Like I said, we need to support scholarship of the Assyrian Christian heritage, and Assyrians should be interested in their own heritage and culture. They should know more about it. Support my work, Aramaic Bible studies. Like I said, there's a lot of things that George Lamza did. I don't agree or said. I don't think he did anything wrong per se, but he's like, here we have the Aramaic language of Jesus. We can use this as a way to study the Bible and study and understand Christ and the apostles and the scriptures. So I think there's value to that, and that's one of the things I'm trying to do in these programs. So I like what George Lomsted did. Made some mistakes probably in the application of it, but I think there's great value in studying the Bible and Jesus through his Aramaic language. I talked about this some more. I think that the Assyrian church should accept the Chinese. And I can't understand why they're rejecting them, why they're rebuffing the Chinese. It's happening, or it's happened. And like I said, these Chinese are all excited, and they're these guys bummed out, and hard to reach them now because they're devastated by being they're all excited they're going to join the Assyrian church. It's like, we're not going to have you. Someone told them that. I don't know who or why, but it happened, and it's unfortunate. And we should accept the Chinese into the Assyrian church. It's like I said, they're throwing a lifeline to them. I mentioned Raymond Abraham. This is also Sam Shamoun. We have to directly confront Islam and what they've done to the Assyrian people, and the threat that they are to the whole world. Radical Islamic ideology, jihadism, and I think it's Assyrians who've suffered under Islamic Sharia law and jihadism. They need to. It's like Assyrian Martyrs Day. That's one of the things we do. We need to draw attention, expose these things. Islam has to be, radical Islam and their legacy of death, killing, destruction, it has to be exposed. That's one of the things the Assyrian people need to do to survive. And like with Armenia, it's like, oh, why don't we have an Assyrian autonomous area or an independent Assyrian state? It's like, oh, that'd be really nice. But it's going to be very difficult to realize that. With God, all things are possible, indeed. But there's nothing stopping the Assyrian people from building up the community in Armenia. And that's one of the things we need to do. I think these 10 points are things the Assyrian people need to do to survive, because action has to be taken to preserve the Assyrian culture, language, and identity. And unlike this person that posted these hateful comments on this video, I think there's a great value to the Assyrian Christian heritage, and it needs to be cherished, and it needs to be preserved. So thank you, God bless you, and I hope you join us for an upcoming episode of Voice of the Word.
Research, rescue, and restore. Help Voice of the Word and Aramaic Christian Ministries mission research the ancient languages, peoples, lands, cultures, and times of the Bible. Rescue persecuted Assyrian Christians in the Middle East and restore Christianity to its original Semitic roots. For Stephen Missick's books, online giving, and other resources from Aramaic Christian Ministries, visit www.stephenmissick.com. Join us next time on Voice of the Word as we research the Scriptures, rescue persecuted Christians, and restore the Church to its Semitic roots.